Hello friends. Today my robot friend is with you. Unfortunately, I don't have enough time to voice part of the text in my own voice. The 615th day of the war between Russia and Ukraine continues. Russian telegram channels write en masse that their units have come close to the Avdiivka coke plant and are about to begin an assault on it. Yesterday, they published a video of a column of black smoke rising from the side of the plant. They write that there were intensified attacks on the enterprise. The Avdiivka coke plant is one of the central hubs of the Ukrainian defense in Avdiivka, the loss of which will make it very difficult to hold the city. Some Russian telegram channels report that in the direction of the plant over the past 24 hours, Russian troops had a tactical success and gained a foothold in the forest belt already on the outskirts of the industrial zone. They also write about the destruction of the first Leopard 2A6 tank near Avdiivka and provide footage. In this regard, some Russian military correspondents write about the arrival of the 47th Magura Brigade near Avdiivka, which was leading an offensive in the south. Ukraine did not confirm this. Ukrainian military telegram channels write that the main intensity of the fighting is now on the other flank from the southern direction, where the enemy has no progress. At the same time, they had previously said that the fighting approached the industrial zone of the Avdiivka coke plant from the side of the waste heap captured by the Russians. Meanwhile, the Russians switched to active operations near Bakhmut, said the commander of the ground forces, Syrsky. In the Bakhmut area, the enemy has significantly strengthened its group and moved from defense to active action, the commander said. According to him, the Russians are trying to stop the advance of the Ukrainian armed forces and restore the lost position using airborne units. In some areas, assault groups from PMC detachments are used. The enemy is suffering heavy losses and cannot achieve their goals, reports Syrsky. The General Staff reports 3 repulsed Russian attacks in the Klishchiivka area. There were earlier reports that the Russians were intensifying attacks in the Hormovy and Bodanivka areas northwest of Bakhmut. The telegram channel of the Ukrainian military located near Bakhmut reports that the Russians have increased their kamikaze drone strikes. They do not work as efficiently as our companies of attack drones, but they fly chaotically, especially in dugouts. Our guys are systematically destroying warehouses and equipment. The enemy climbed north of Bakhmut. He was stopped. Our movement has also stopped for now. We are consolidating on the occupied lines and we are repelling Russian attacks. Everything will be fine, writes the Bakhmut Demon telegram channel. There is also news from the Kherson direction. The Russian state news agency writes about a change in Russian command in this sector of the front. The commander of the Dnipro group of troops, Makarevich, was removed. The commander of the airborne troops and a native of Donbass, Teplinsky, was appointed in his place. There is no official confirmation of this information. Earlier, information appeared in Russian military telegram channels that units of the Ukrainian armed forces began operations on the eastern, Russian-controlled bank of the Dnipro and entered individual villages there. Moreover, according to telegram channels, in recent days the bridgehead there has expanded somewhat and the Ukrainian armed forces are transferring reinforcements. The Ukrainian telegram channel Deep State, after information about the replacement of the Russian command, commented for the first time on the situation in the Kherson direction. The heavy bloody operation on the eastern bank has been going on for 3 weeks. Part of the village of Krunki is under our control, but the information about the liberation of the village is not true, Deep State wrote. Also today, the Speaker of the Southern Defense Forces, Yevhenii, said that the Ukrainian armed forces are achieving good results on the eastern coast of the Kherson region, but this has not yet been covered. In particular, she said, the Russian army was forced to pull back its positions on the eastern bank. We continue to achieve good results in our fight both in counterbattery and in other methods of work. But this has not yet been covered precisely so that the result is very powerful and recorded, so that it is not such a short-term victory. Our counterbattery fight has forced they also pull back their positions quite powerfully on the eastern bank, but not yet enough to stop the shelling of the western bank, Yevhenii said. She says there has been less artillery shelling on the west bank, but more airstrikes. The use of tactical aviation, which has recently seriously increased in the overall numbers of reports over the West Bank, is a consequence of the fact that artillery can no longer reach everywhere, the speaker said. I note that it is still not very clear what kind of operation is being carried out on the eastern bank of the Dnipro. Are we talking about separate sabotage attacks in order to pull part of the Russian forces from other fronts to the Kherson direction? Or is this the first stage of a full-scale operation to cross the Dnipro with the goal of landing on the eastern bank in large forces and launching an offensive east to the borders of Crimea and to the rear of the Russian grouping on the Zaporizhzhia front? But the fact that the Russians changed the commander in this direction and sent Teplinsky here, who is considered one of the most capable Russian military leaders, shows that Moscow is paying very serious attention to the defense of the eastern bank of the Dnipro. Time magazine published a large article with comments from Zelensky and representatives of his entourage about the war in Ukraine and its prospects, with the title on the cover, "No one believes in the victory of Ukraine as much as I do." It is interesting that the head of the presidential office, Ermak, in his Telegram channel first recommended reading this text, but then deleted the post about it. I will not go into details of this sensational article. You can find and read it yourself. However, there is an important point in it, which, perhaps for the first time, is so clearly emphasized disagreements about how to proceed further between Zelensky and his closest associates. Some assistants to the president of Ukraine, by the way, it's interesting who among them is so talkative, told a Time journalist that many around Zelensky do not believe in a complete and final victory over Russia, but the president himself is unshakable, which causes concern among his associates. Even more important, judging by the article, the military also disagrees with Zelensky. However, rumors, regularly refuted at the official level, about disagreements regarding approaches to military operations between the president and the command of the Ukrainian armed forces in the person of Zaluzhny appeared earlier. Just the other day, the British Times wrote about this, noting that the commander-in-chief of the Ukrainian army proposes to switch to more cautious tactics and focus on defense, while Zelensky insists on continuing the offensive. But in Time magazine's account, the differences between Ukraine's military and political leadership appear unprecedented. A blatant example is given of the military's refusal to launch an attack on Gorliivka, despite the direct demand of the country's political leadership. It is also said that commanders would like to sit in the trenches and hold the defense, but Zelensky does not agree with this. And, moreover, he wants to make one of the top generals extreme for lack of success at the front. If the information, of course, is related to reality, then perhaps one of the three highest military commanders of Ukraine is Zaluzhny, Syrsky, or Tarnavsky, which in itself indicates the existing strong tension between the government and the military command. And if such a resignation occurs, it could have serious consequences, including for the mood in society and in the army. The question is, why did this article appear and what can the trends described in it indicate? At a minimum, this may indicate that the military and part of Zelensky's entourage want to change the tactics of warfare, moving from offensive to strategic defense in order to wear down enemy forces and accumulate forces for future campaigns. And, through articles in influential Western media, supporters of this approach are trying to put pressure on Zelensky, as well as convey their point of view to key Western allies, so that they, for their part, also change the president's attitude. And, perhaps, they kept him from the planned resignations among the military. At the most, this may be a signal that part of the military political leadership of Ukraine is ready to freeze the war along the front line, believing that military victory on the battlefield is impossible. However, there are no sufficient grounds for such a conclusion yet. In addition, the further strategy of the war directly depends on the position of the United States. And if Washington says that the Korean scenario is unacceptable, then it is unlikely that discussions will continue after that. But, in general, it is obvious that the appearance of such articles does not strengthen the faith of the Western allies in the victory of Ukraine and, accordingly, does not strengthen the desire to increase or at least continue in the same volumes of military assistance. Actually, Zelensky also recognizes such a problem, as follows from Times material. If this trend continues, it may be necessary to reconsider approaches not only to waging war, but also to the terms on which it will end.
Friends, please support my channel if you like the video I provide, because making video is my full-time job. Thank you very much and see you in the next video.